Yeah, ra-pa-pa-bum. Hello there. Right, we are live and welcome everybody. There I was sitting in a pastor's office back when I lived in New Zealand. I'm sitting there in fact, it wasn't actually in the office, it was in their living room. And his wife, who I considered a friend, was breastfeeding their newborn child. And he walks into the room all big chested and I'm the man, I'm the macho man. And he looks at his wife and he speaks German to her. But now I grew up in Zimbabwe, and I grew up with friends and all the rest of it who spoke Afrikaans, of which Dutch is, Afrikaans is a derivative. It's the sort of family and the language sort of community. But I understood what he was saying. He basically was telling her to cover up because I'm a lesbian. I've just told him I'm a lesbian, and she's feeding his child in front of me. I tell you what, that kind of like it freaked me out. It really freaked me out. And I lost my cool. I lost my cool. Here I was talking to a woman that I was not attracted to, totally respected. I was communicating to her, and she was talking to me. We were having a connection where we were starting to connect in a way. And he comes in and he totally shatters that. I tell you what, I flipped. I completely flipped out, and I lost my cool. I said some things, and I walked out. And I haven't spoken to either one of them again since then. But hang on, that's that's just a result of something that happened. And to understand where I got from there, and to know why I kind of lost my cool a little bit there, let's go back to 2002, where I'm still living in Zimbabwe. Okay. And I've come out to myself. I've realized that I am a lesbian. And this is why I've been engaged to a guy at time. I was engaged to a guy for 11 years, guys, 11 years. And I couldn't put a date on it. I couldn't, what do you call it? I couldn't finalize anything. I was just like, yeah, I just can't do this. I'm like, I'm living in this country that I can't fully come out. I can't walk down the streets with a partner or anything like that, because at that time Mugabe was the president, or he was like the dictator of the time, and he'd made it very clear that anybody that was in a homosexual relationship would be arrested, no questions, no trial, just arrested and thrown into prison. And if they survived, they survived. If they didn't, they didn't. Well, it's what it was. And and I wasn't going to chance that. I wanted to get out of the country. I wanted to live a life. And but not only that, once had sort of like made peace with myself, I had also started to talk to people. I wanted to be real. I wanted to be honest. I wanted to be transparent. So I communicated the same at that particular time to the pastor of the children's church that I was connected with. I worked in the children's department in the church. I was ostracized. I was kicked out. I was told I wasn't allowed to be around the children. It was like, I was basically, the whole church just pushed me to the side. They told my mother that I was in sin, I was going to go to hell, and that to save her soul, save her spirit, she should ostracize me. She should reject me. Thankfully, she didn't. Although she kind of like got more and more separated from me when I actually left the country, and I moved to New Zealand, and so there wasn't this constant connection with her. But we still spoke on the phone, we still had a relationship, but it wasn't as beautiful and full as what it was, because of the influence of the particular church that she belonged to, which was Rhema Church, and then it changed its name and all the rest of it. So I don't even know what it's called now. But I left that and I went to New Zealand thinking I'm going to a country that's pretty au fait, right? It's up there. They have freedom of this and freedom of that. The gay community is quite affluent in the country. But I came against, and look, a little bit of this is my fault, because I went back into the church, because new country, new things, didn't know anybody, and I thought, well, what do I know? Where am I comfortable at? Where do I feel safe? And I did, for some reason, feel safe in the church. So I went back to the church, and again, I sort of closed ranks around myself of who I was, what I was. And then I was like, no, I can't be doing this. I can't be living like this, because I still had the same fears. I still had the same stuff going on, and I needed to be free. I needed to be myself to discover more of who I am. So and this is why I spoke to them and I said, this is who I am. And again, the whole bang shoot, just this eruption, ostracized, pulled into the pastor's office, told I was going to go to hell, that I was going to, if I didn't repent and if I didn't take what do they call it? It was like I needed to be counseled back into restorative sort of stuff and blah blah blah. And I was like, fuck that. There's nothing wrong with me. And when this dude spoke the way he did about me to his wife, I just basically I flipped out and I said, if you guys ever speak about me publicly or you badmouth me or anything like that, I'll freaking take you to the lawyers. I'll take you to the cleaners, and this is, as far as I'm concerned, drawing a line under this now. We are no longer connected in any way whatsoever. And I don't want to really major on that negative stuff, but that is where a lot of my sort of interaction with the church sort of like ended up with. So anyway, I'm still hungry. I'm still searching for this deep knowing. I've got this deep knowing inside of me that there is something beyond the concept, something beyond the the revelations or the knowings of who, what, and why. Now I know this sounds like me sort of like just spewing out my story, but I want you to look at it and is there anything in my story, and I've still got bits more to say, but is there anything in my story that could relate to you? Maybe not through church, maybe not through a lesbian relationship, but is there anything that when you look at it, you go, hell, I can see my life in that story where I was pushed down, I was ostracized, told to conform. That if I didn't conform, I would be pushed aside. Wouldn't be allowed to participate, etc., etc. So um, there I am. I leave the church, and I'm really serious about it now. So that's it. And I'm searching now. I'm searching for relationship, not only relationship with myself, but relationship with the world around me. I'm looking for a spiritual relationship as well. I'm looking for, and I don't quite put it in that terminology, but I just know, I know that there is this higher power, and I know that there is something out there that has been adopted by the church and every other religion as this God energy, but I know it's not like a God. It's more than that. Okay, and so anyway, at that particular time I was living with family. I was living in Auckland with my aunt, who was like a second mother to me. She'd actually immigrated from Zimbabwe as well, set up home in New Zealand, and she had a spare room, and she said, "Look, I know you're looking for." I'd just sort of been evicted because I wouldn't. Me, I'm a rebel, right? People I was staying with, they were like, it was a case of like, oh, we're all gonna just. One person decided to buy the groceries, and then they would split the bill. But the thing is, they bought a lot of stuff I didn't eat. One, I didn't like the food. Two, I ate very basic in comparison to them, and I refused to pay for their food that they would eat. And I said, no, there's nothing here that I eat. I'm going to buy my own food. And so they basically gave me a certain amount of time, evicted me, and I was like, shit, now I've got to find somewhere else to live. And my aunt said, well, come, we've got a spare room. This is the rent, blah, blah, blah. Look after yourself. I'm not going to look after you. That's it. So I was there. And, but she was also like a second mother to me. I mean, she'd been with me my entire life. She knew all about me. And I remember having this real heart to heart with her. She'd got really sick. And in fact, she had cancer and she was dying. And I had taken it upon myself to look after her, to try and make sure that she ate. Her husband would come and go, work-wise and all the rest of it. And then he would just sit in front of his computer or telly, and that would be it. I mean, like seriously, at times I used to look at him and think, dude, can you not get up and at least make your wife a cup of tea or something like that? But I remember sort of sitting there with my aunt and going, hey, this is, I need to share something with you. And I poured my heart out to her about everything that was going on. And she looked at me and she was like, slow clap, like, and I'm like, why are you doing that? She said, I have known, sweetheart, since you were about 14, if not beyond, before that, that you were different, that you were never going to settle down with a bloke, and that you were, for want of a better word, you were a lesbian. But I never really labeled you as that. I just knew that you were different and that you were attracted to girls. And so there I was looking at my aunt, and I'm like, well, why didn't you say something beforehand? I could have been. Blah, blah, blah." And she said, no. She said, it's not for me to tell you. It's for you to figure these things out. You've got to work your way through this. You've got to know who you are, because then once you know who you are, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can shift you. Nobody can change your mind. And it's funny because that, if you look at that statement through anything in your life, okay, whether it's your self-identification, whether it's your working through something, if once that foundation of know who you are, know who you are, when you know who you are, nobody can shift that, nobody can alter that, nobody can take that away from you, because a knowing is a knowing is a knowing. It's here, it's in the very chest of you. And she said, she really encouraged me. She said, look, why don't you go somewhere where you literally are going to step off into the deep end of the pool, where you are going to have to swim for yourself. You've been offered a job in Wellington, which was in a completely different area of New Zealand, and take the job and go and live. And she pushed me, and I went. I packed up and I took the job, and I ended up in Wellington, and that was around about 2006. I found a small network of friends. I started to connect up really well, and I basically started to self-identify more and more as Louise. This is who I am, the lesbian, gay, whatever you want to call me, but this is who I am. I also started to realize that that spiritual hunger inside of me was still bubbling away quietly in the background, but it was more conscious now. I was actually more consciously aware of different nuances of energy around me. I could feel things. I was beginning to get sensitive with different stuff again, but I didn't quite know how to redirect this. But I'm just really connecting in with that. Okay, so 2008 now. This is 2 years later after I've moved from Wellington, from Auckland to Wellington. Got there 2006, jumped to 2008, and I've met now a community of lesbians. We meet every Friday at a place called the Ballroom, which is basically where everybody plays billiards or pool or something like that. And we're playing there, and I meet Heather. Oh my God. I got to tell you this, okay? So the first time I meet Heather, I never see her face. All I hear is this loud, raucous laughter at this table of girls playing pool opposite the table that I'm at. And there's this girl who's obviously just done a good shot, and there's this music coming through, and it's air guitar music. It's loud, it's party, and she's playing the air guitar with her pool cue, and she's hopping on one leg, and she's doing that guitar dance, and the vibration and the energy coming off her was pure gold. And literally, I'm going to say this, at that moment I fell in love. I had, as I say, I hadn't seen what she looked like. It was her energy, it was the force of vibrancy. There was just something about that woman that it just pinged me in my chest, and I was like, that's her. That is the person. That is the energy. That is the individual. That is the energy. The person I've come to love. I've come to find them. It was just instant. It was instant clear like that. It was like this realization. Um, However, I obviously didn't tell her that. Not immediately. I didn't tell anybody that. I mean, could you imagine? Anyway, so I am. I'm experiencing that. I've also, at the same time, guys, at the same time as me, sort of like evolving out away from the church, and still sort of like simmering with all of that, what had gone on with the particular church in Wellington, where I had said, look, this is who I am, and they sort of, at one way, they're sort of like going, yeah, okay, well, we can work with this, and then just being told very, very bluntly, by the German couple, that, being told, listening to the pastor, and who said to his wife, cover up, you don't want to expose yourself to this woman, she's gay, it's like being with a man, breastfeeding your child in front of a man, da, 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 da. And I really, I tell you what, the that really burnt me, because it was a case of like, who the do they think they are? Seriously, you know? Um, and it but you see, that had to happen, because with me looking at that and going, this is what they think, that I'm less than them now. I'm below them. And when I cut the ties, and I energetically did that without actually realizing, I cut the ties, and I said, "Fuck this! I'm not doing this anymore." I had started to connect with some people that were on my wavelength. I was finding out more about who I was, and that happened when I made a mental, physical, emotional decision to cut to cut what was an incorrect connection. I was never meant to be a preacher. I was never meant to be this biblically correct person. Okay, what I was meant to be was myself, in the truth of who I am, in that which is the realization that at the very core of me is this energy being that loves life, that feels and is connected to the universe. And believe me, it was like, once I made that choice, once I realized where I should sort of situate myself, and where I should remove myself, and I make that decision, and I as I say, I energetically cut ties that I didn't even consciously know that I was doing, this cutting, this releasing myself. It was like the universe went, she's ready. She's ready. Because I started to feel energy around me. I started to feel the presence of guides. That's what I'll use that word now. But at the time, I was like, I feel like I'm walking around with somebody walking next to me. What's going on? There's nobody here, but I can. I mean, like, I remember the very first time when I went to the pool girls. I was as nervous as I like. It was like I was going on a date for the very, very first time. I was nervous. I was sweating bullets, and I got to the door of of the ballroom, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." And it was like a just a green swing door. I remember it was just a green swing door that you'd push open and it would swing. You walk through and it would just swing back, and I felt this, like, between my shoulder blades, this little push that kind of like propelled me forward. And so my hand went out to the door to stop myself from falling, and of course it pushed open, and I ended up inside, up the to go up the steps. Now I start walking up the steps, and I'm like, why am I going up the steps? My brain's telling me a thousand different things. My heart's doing this. And I'm like, why am I here? What am I doing? What if nobody likes me? What if? And I get to the middle of the steps, the stairway, and I want to turn around and go down the steps again. And then literally again, I feel like, I don't know if any of you had this done as you were a kid, when you get this the scruff of your back, your shirt here, and the breeches, and you were like propelled forward. That's what it felt like. I felt like I was just being propelled up the rest of the stairs, so that I couldn't escape. I was seen, and as I was seen, it was like a relief, actually, because it was like, I don't have to pretend anymore. And that's, for me, I think this particular part, it was a long walk out for me, because it was backwards and forwards. It was like, I started to release myself in 2002, by speaking to everybody in, not everybody, but the church people, and my mum, and I was like, I'm different. I don't want to be this way that everybody says I should be. This is who I am here, and having that backwards and forwards, that toing and froing, and then coming into a state where I was fearful again, and it's like slipping back. and going back into what was the safety net, and then realizing that safety net wasn't actually a safety net. It was a suffocation net. It was a compression net. It was keeping me down. It wasn't letting me grow. It wasn't letting me breathe. I wasn't being who I wanted to be. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I didn't want to be nasty to anybody. I didn't want to lose my temper and yell at people. But at the same time, I didn't want to be abused verbally either. I didn't want to be spoken about. I didn't want to be ripped into and dissected by people who had no concept of who I was. And so I had this between 2002 and 2008. I had this backward and forward, which is why I call it the long walk out. Okay. Well, because I was carrying baggage, other people's perceptions. I was carrying guilt. I was carrying all sorts of different emotions and thought patterns and all the rest of it that I shouldn't have been. I felt so guilty that I couldn't give my mother a grandchild, because that's one of the things she said to me. She said, "On you won't give me a grandchild now. How am I going to have a grandchild?" Luckily, thank goodness, my sisters had 2 children and my brothers had 4 children. So I kind of feel like I didn't have to do that. I would have loved to have had a kid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of these people that don't want to have children. I love children, and if I'd had been able to have a child, I would have. But it didn't come about for me, and I live with that, and I've accepted that. You know, so I've had to let go of a lot of baggage that I brought with me, that I absorbed over time, with believing what other people thought about me. And I wonder, guys, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you found yourselves in situations where you've made a decision to push out of something, where you've made a decision to leave something behind, and you've started to walk out, and you've started that path, you started that journey out, only to find yourself in a circumstance and situation which scares the shit out of you again, and you go back to what you believe is a safety net, only to find that that safety net is not a safety net. It's a suffocation net, because you're allowing it to suffocate you. You're allowing it to dictate to you what other people think you should be. And all I can do is encourage you to look at that and say, if you find yourself there, you can get back on the road out. You can continue walking out into freedom. You don't have to be as drastic as me, as like moving countries and all the rest of it. But I did that. Your journey could be totally different to me. I'm not saying that I'm anything special. I'm just saying that this is my journey. But my journey might reflect to you parts of your journey. And so maybe there is something there that you can actually look at and go, I can identify here. I've muted myself. I've suppressed my voice. I've allowed myself to be absorbed into something that I'm not comfortable with. I've allowed other people's perceptions to lay a hold of me and become much more than my own truth. And so maybe it's time for your truth to rise up. Maybe it's time to give yourself a good old shake and shake off the dust. Shake off that which is not yours, and actually go, who am I? Under the noise, under the everything. Who am I? Am I what has been presented to the world based on everybody else's perceptions? Or am I this, which is my perception, which is who I believe I am, in my truth, in my core? It's it's a depth and a level of comprehension that only you can go through. Only you can access this. Sure, there are others out there that can help you and can guide you and can give you some commentary, but nobody can tell you who you are. You can tell yourself. And when you do discover that, that is the most mind blowing and freeing moment that you can ever experience. And that's why I'm sharing my stories in little bits and pieces, because somewhere along these lines, you might find somewhere that resonates with you, somewhere that connects with you, and it helps you step out into your freedom. So, anyway, that's it for this week. Next week, we will continue and we will begin to, I don't know, well, if we've had a long walk out, what's next? I don't know. Maybe the radio gets turned back on. Maybe something happens. Wonder how. Yeah, maybe something happens. Something good happens. Maybe something weird happens. Hmm. Anyway, come back next week and we'll continue. But in the meantime, if you've got any comments, any sort of statements, questions, put them in the comments and I'll read them a little bit later on. Thanks for being with me, with you. Good grief. And I will catch you next week. Ciao, guys.